Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, guests Neha, Jyoti, and Jaya, for joining us. And thank you, all the viewers, for joining in for this really wonderful conversation. This is also a subject which is very close to my heart. Ever since the Transgender Person Protection of Rights Act has been passed in 2019, it has also become a mandate that trans folks are included in workplaces. And along with that, so is the requirement that arises from a cultural perspective for all the other parts of the community as well, which is LGBTQIA plus. And today we thought that it would be interesting to have a conversation with three such leaders who are actively participating and looking into such initiatives. So without any further delay, I'm going to introduce our three guests. We have Neha Satish is a DI and CSR lead at Thomson Reuters. She is based out of Bangalore. She started her career with a corporate, transitioned into NGOs, and she's now back in the corporate world. Her current role in Thomson Reuters, she partners with businesses across India operations to support them with the endeavor in building a diverse workforce. And at the moment, there are three current flagship programs, which are Project Pride, hiring first generation learners, and ASD internship programs. She's committed to having uncomfortable dialogues in the organization, questions the norms, and helps create more equitable workspaces where everyone can bring their true self. I think this is extremely important that, as a role, we are able to also have these uncomfortable conversations. And I think when we speak today, we'd love to know, Neha, some of the examples as well of, what may have happened and how you, really handled those situations. Also, would like to now introduce Jaya. Jaya is the Learning and Development and Chief Diversity Officer at Tata Steel. She is an electrical and electronics engineer from BIT Mesra, and she did her PGDBM from XLRI Jamshedpur. In her 25 years of association with the organization, she's worked across various functions like engineering, projects, supply chain, total quality management, and before moving to her current role. She spent 10 years in total quality management, spearheading Tata Steel's quality journey, uh, which saw the company getting national as well as international recognition as an industry leader. In fact, during her stint, Tata Steel became the first company outside Japan to successfully challenge the Deming Grand Prize and the Prime Minister's Trophy for the best integrated steel plant consecutively for 3 years in a row from 2017 to 19. She's also the chairperson of the internal committee of Bosch at Tata Steel and is a member of the board of directors of a subsidiary company. She's appointed as a chief diversity officer in 2021 and is passionately looking to engage and taking the journey forward as far as diversity and inclusion at Tata Steel is concerned. So again, thank you, Jaya, for joining us, and really looking forward to hear everything you've been doing as far as inclusion of LGBTQIA plus folks is concerned. And lastly, I want to also introduce you to Jyoti. Jyoti is the head of people service delivery at London Stock Exchange Group, and she is responsible for business partnership and advisory, HR service delivery, and driving the people agenda for the location. She's been associated with the company since 1999 and has held a variety of roles in the business before switching to serve as a human resources professional. She led the people function in India for the financial and risk business of Thomson Reuters, and as Refinitiv was formed in 2019 in June. Jyoti has a bachelor's degree in science from Mumbai University, a postgraduate degree in business administration from Symbiosis Institute of Management Studies, originally from Mumbai, and she's now settled in Bangalore with her family. So, thank you so much, all of you, for joining in. And I would want to firstly start with perhaps Jaya. Maybe you can help us understand what are some of the policies that have been created at Tata Steel currently to welcome the trans as well as the LGBTQIA folks, if at all.
Thank you, Shivangi, and thank you for the introduction. And very happy to connect with all my co-panelists. Before I come to the policies, just a very brief, that background. that in December 2021, we became the first Indian company to open up our core mining operations to transgender, to members from the trans community. And today, in the past 6 months, we have grown this number almost 7 times. And being able to grow these numbers requires a lot of work to be done in terms of policies, frameworks, etc., to really make the place an inclusive one. To give you a very brief idea of the kind of work that we have done in this space, we have launched the Equal Opportunity and Anti-Discriminatory Policy, and this takes into care the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019, and and the HIV/AIDS Syndrome Act of 2017. A very comprehensive policy that we have laid out for the organization. And in order to ensure that the policy is effectively implemented across locations, we are multi-locational. So that it's implemented effectively, we have appointed LISA officers and complaint officers to make sure that any kind of issues, grievances are picked up early on. And we have a posh policy, which is all inclusive. It is the posh policy is for any employee of the organization that faces sexual harassment. So this policy is all encompassing, very comprehensive, and it is aimed to make sure that the workplace is truly inclusive and is open to all members of diverse community. The policy is complete right from the hire to retire stage of an employee. And like I mentioned, it aims to prevent any sort of discrimination, whether it is about gender identity, sexual orientation, harassment, all of it. So, and we have a very strong governance process to make sure that everyone is heard, any issue is addressed, and it's taken through appropriate forums to make sure that uh, people people are able to bring their true selves to the organization and are able to discharge their work in happily. Apart from that, we have put out many equal benefits, and most of the benefits that any employee has in the organization is also there for our members from the LGBTQ community. We have the transfer and relocation policy, which is similar. There is a familiarization visit and 20 days initial stay, which is there for everybody, including the members from the trans community. Our housing policy in terms of joint house points, etc., is also extended to members from the trans community. Medical is a big area to work on. We have extended the scope of health checkups, medical benefits, reimbursements, insurance, all of it to a process to facilitate transition as required for all our uh, uh, members from the trans fraternity. Our honeymoon package, we have the employee assistance program. So all of it is has been just opened up for all members of the diverse community, and also the including the members from the trans community. Uh, there are other things like with respect to travel, stay, and transport. So we have accessible mode of transport accommodation that has been extended. And even for parents, even the LGBT plus community, the parents can take their kid to any location outside the bay city for any critical work, and they can a caregiver can accompany them, and this is extended for a maximum of 2 children below the age of 5. So the idea behind this is that any policy that we have is uh, is applicable to any member of the diverse community without making any distinction. So these are some of the work that we have done in this area, Shivangi.
Okay, thank you, Jaya, for that. I think that just seems absolutely wonderful. And you said that this journey has started sometime in 2021, right? So it's
That's right.
about
So in a structured manner, in December 21, we started to take, although if you ask, several years ago, we did have many members from the trans community, but I would still like to start December 21 as the structured way of having started the process of onboarding. Yeah.
Okay. So it's been, I mean, formally speaking, it's been about 6 to 7 months, I think. and it already seems to be a lot, that there are so many things that are happening. So thank you, Jaya, for that, and I'm going to come back to you with a couple of follow-up questions as well. But before that, I just want to understand from Jyoti and Neha also, what it is like at their organizations. So perhaps Jyoti, you can go next and help us understand what it has been like so far.
Thank you, Shivangi. And thank you, Jaya. I think that was a great summary of all that you have done and in a very short period of time. Um, I'm going to repeat some of the things that Jaya is going to say, has said already. But just to give a context, the London Stock Exchange Group was established globally 300 years ago. And in India, we are 1 year young and at the same time 170 years old by virtue of all the acquisitions that have taken place. Uh, as a result, there are evident advantages of having a footprint for a long time, and by that I mean that you have the foundation, you have the policies, the employee networks, the perks that come with being a global organization, a community to learn, leverage, talent attraction initiatives, and above all, you know that you have an opportunity in front of you as an organization to consciously make an impact. Talking about policies, and I won't repeat because Jay did cover a lot of those already. I would say that two underlying foundational principles that is built into our code of conduct. One is equal opportunity, and two is zero tolerance for any form of discrimination. And we really, really serious about it. So our equal employment opportunity, anti-harassment, and other policies highlight zero tolerance for any form of discrimination. And our code also clearly calls out sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or trans identity, where our employees can be themselves at work. All our policies are also reviewed with a lens of inclusivity periodically. And I say this purposely because this is an ever evolving context. And we are doing it again this year. We're also currently revamping our global transitioning policy and intend to launch it soon. One thing I would add, in addition to what the policies that Jaya covered, I would say that we also use a tool called as Textio, which is as a platform to ensure all our job descriptions when it comes to recruitment, whether internally or externally, are in a neutral tone to avoid any unintended bias. And we also have confidential data collection measures, which is, we self-identify. For example, I go on our HR system and I self-identify and self-declare what I am, and that's maintained with the highest levels of confidentiality. Shivangi, I would say that all these things actually we believe is what creates the ecosystem and provides the framework that we are inclusive in the experience internally, and we are welcoming when folks join us. And in my view, in the current environment, these have become table stakes. And I just want to also share that finally I come to this conversation from a place of sharing the energy because we're all learning through the process from each other, within the industry, from other organizations, and there is so much to do and explore. We surely don't know it all. Back to you, Shivangi.
Thank you, Jyoti, for that. And I think very nicely put that I think we've just started the journey and there's a lot to do and there's a lot to learn. And such conversations really help in that sense. And especially the two quick takeaways I have from what you mentioned is about the tool that you're using. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name of the tool.
It's called Textio,
Texture.
Textio. And you feed into it as to what you believe as an organization in, right?
Hmm.
Whether it is gender, whether it is the tone, the language, the culture,
Hmm.
race,
Hmm.
ethnicity, everything. And then it gives you automatic prompts when hiring managers and recruiters actually put that in. That's been very interesting to learn.
Right. So this was one interesting one, and I'm sure that whoever is watching this as well, this is going to help them a lot to really ensure that if they are putting out requests of say, job descriptions or any kind of request to welcome the community, I think it would be important to look at the language as well. So I think this becomes really, really important. So thank you, Jyoti, for sharing that. Neha, moving on to you now. What has it been like at Thomson Reuters?
Yeah, so our journey is similar to what Jaya and Jyoti sort of shared. But of course, each organization having their own flavor. We have certain things that's unique to Thomson Reuters as well. So at TR, even before 377 got written down, we've always had an active ERG, as we call it, or at TR we call it a BRG, which is a business resource group for Pride members. So we've always had allies and people from the community actively talking about things, celebrating Pride Month and all of that, but very internal. And of course, this was not published as openly as we would have liked to, and that we do now. And soon after 377 was written down, of course, a monumental move, a great thing for the country on the whole. There were few things that we started doing really actively. The ERG already being present, we were looking at other things. We were like, okay, now we need to get into active hiring. Now, if we are doing that, if we're going to go out and say that we are an equal opportunity employer, what are the things that we need to do internally? So we did a whole exercise of relooking at our policies, the infrastructure that we have, and also understanding how sensitive the current workforce is if we are to go all out. So we did a bunch of things, right? So there were a lot of conversations, right from 377 got written down. We called some of our diversity and inclusion consultants and partners on board, had a lot of open conversations. We had conversations with lawyers and so the first step was to raise awareness. So we started having lots and lots of conversations around this, helping people understand the business imperative and all of that. The next thing, like I said, was to look at our mediclaims and such. So now we have same-sex partners included in the health insurance policy. We have gender affirmation surgeries also part of it, ensuring that folks who wish to opt for the gender affirmation surgery get the kind of support that they deserve. If it comes to leaves, if it comes to a complete work from home setup, till they feel a lot more confident and in their skin when they're coming back into office. And to help them navigate some of those challenges that they might have from a psychological or mental standpoint, right? So we have an employee assistance program that really covers all of that. So we wanted to ensure that it was like an end-to-end sort of a cover that's provided. And when it comes to infrastructure, to ensuring that we have gender neutral washrooms. I mean, gender neutral washrooms is not something specifically for people from the LGBT community. It's for all, right? Anybody who's in office. So we ensure that from an infrastructure standpoint, we're taking this into consideration. Just like how Jyoti shared, we ensure that our job descriptions, all of our policies, any communication that's put out is gender neutral, ensuring that those unconscious or biases don't crop up, unintentional biases don't crop up, right? So that's one thing that we do. And these evaluations of the policies and such happen on an annual basis, like in most organizations. And we continue to have those conversations. So once we did all of these things like infrastructure, ensuring that policies were in check, the next thing was to do is to run active sensitization workshops. Of course, since we had an active business resource group, there was understanding about the LGBT community, but we wanted to ensure that we're covering our bases to the extent possible. So we run something called a SOGI 101 workshops, which is sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, which covers like the basics of what what the acronym stands for, what are the kind of challenges that people from the community go through, and if you choose to be an ally and if you're comfortable being an ally, what is the journey of an ally's life and how they can actively sort of give back to the community at office, within their teams, etc. So we started running those sessions, ensuring that the whole population goes through it. We also have a partnership with LinkedIn Learning, so we set out few online learning modules, very bite-sized modules. So even on the go, in like under 10 minutes, you get an understanding of what it means when you say someone's from the LGBT community. At TR, how do we look at allyship, and how can you become an ally? So that was something that we focused on. And then once there was like an understanding, and we've understood that more and more folks are aware, the next thing for us to do was to ensure that there's also representation. So we held something called the faces session, where folks from the community, somebody who identifies as bisexual, somebody who identifies as an asexual person, somebody who is gay, lesbian, who's trans. So we ensure that we bring on folks from the community to come and talk, to actually share their lived experiences. Because as DNI experts, or as HR professionals like Jaya, Jyoti, myself, or the whole team at Equilibrio as well. Just us talking about it sometimes doesn't help. It really helps if those lived experiences are shared. So we had some of those, which went on to be really candid. We had employees raising some very important questions, and getting that dialogue started. So this was something that we did to sort of build the base and to ensure that we are ready to welcome workforce. Of course, even before this, we've had folks from the community, but before we started sort of like a focus drive, we ensured that these things were in place. The next thing that we did was to also ensure that there was self identification. So, like Jyoti shared, we also have a similar program. We call it Count Me In. What it means is that folks can, if they're comfortable, go on the HRIS tool and sort of share their SOGI. Of course, this is voluntary. And doing this sort of helps the organization to sort of shape and shift our policies and the current workshops or programs that we run, right? One, we understand the makeup of the organization, like how many folks are from the community or not. It might not be all encompassing, but to a bigger extent. And over the years, like from 2019 until now, we've seen that number coming up, which is also like an indication for us to understand that, okay, these workshops and these sensitization efforts are showing results, because more and more people are feeling comfortable to sort of self ID, right? So we get that makeup, which is important, and that sort of dictates many things, like when it comes to policies, when it comes to the other accommodations that we make, or the other kind of support that we need to be giving. So the self ID was like the next step, and then we entered into full blown hiring initiatives. So since 2020, we've had like a focused hiring drive for people from the LGBT community. Not that any roles are set aside, but there is a specific team. So it's like a partnership with the recruitment team and myself, to ensure that for any role that we put out, we sort of source some resumes. If we understand that candidates still have some trouble, ensuring that there is a mentorship program in place even before the interviews happen, so that they feel a little more confident to face the panel. And then post onboarding, along with the regular onboarding program that we have, we also have a buddy system in case the candidate says that, I feel like I need a buddy to sort of understand or navigate through the whole team. And then once I'm comfortable, to make that decision if I want to be out or not. So this is sort of like the journey or life cycle that Thomson Reuters sort of went through from the time 377 got written down until now. And like Jyoti shared, we are all in this journey of learning every year. We learn from different organizations, we learn from what's happening in the world, and we're constantly trying to sort of change and adapt and ensure that we have a workplace that is continuing to be an inclusive place, and where everyone can be themselves.
Thank you for that, Neha. And it was rightly said that in all of these initiatives, the lived experience also becomes an extremely important aspect, because, I mean, nobody can really, talk about it just by hearing other people out. So I think this is a very, very interesting thing that you've mentioned. And the other part that really stood out was you mentioned about how your insurance is completely, trying to look at it from an end-to-end perspective. Right. So I'm also wondering, and actually I have a question. I'm sure that the viewers would also want to know this, that are these specific packages that insurance companies create for you, basis, what you tell me, what are the kind of services you need, or is this something that you pick from the set of packages that are available in the market itself? Because from a general research perspective, you don't end up seeing a lot of these packages that are really available in the market.
Absolutely. So these are conversations that each organization will have to have individually with their insurance provider. And it's a journey, right? Like having those conversations, telling them that this is a priority, we need to be part of our general Mediclaim. So it is not essentially like a package that's readily available. Insurance companies might not necessarily pitch that to you in the first go. But if this is something that a corporate or an organization is prioritizing, then this is a conversation that they will need to have with their insurance agencies. Even for us, right, we got to learn from one of a forum like such that this is a possibility. We can have these conversations, and this is how we sort of navigate those conversations. So it was a journey for us, and I'm so happy to be sharing that here in the hope that another organization can also sort of follow the suit.
Neha, Shivangi, if I may just add there, um, you know,
Yes, Jyoti.
it's very a good point that are we actually having packages which are available that we can easily pick up from. And I would say that I think, like Neha mentioned, even for us, it started actually from a request from our organization, right? One of the individuals from the community came and raised it with us. And even before, for example, the sex, I'm referring to the sex or gender reaffirmation surgery to be covered as a part of medical insurance, the transition procedure. And even, for example, the same sex partners' medical coverage. I think creating that allyship and community in the organization allowed, and that's what I was reflecting, right? That allowed people to come and talk to us much ahead of times. And I just wanted to share an example. There was years ago, there was an individual who was transitioning and came and said that they would like to actually change their name. And at that point in time, when the request came to us, we were not really sure how to handle this at all. But I'm so glad that we made it happen and we have evolved through that process. And we now know what needs to be done, right? So I think, this is going to be learning, listening to not just what other companies, but also what your own organization's community actually tells you.
Thank you for that, Neha. And I'm also wondering, Jaya, how has it been like for all of you at Tata Steel?
So, Shivangi, much the same. This is a journey that you keep learning as you move. And as the numbers increased, when we first took them in our minds, there were a lot of concerns on the medical front, and we had open discussions with the members from the community as well as the medical fraternity. And we came out with, at that time when we were hiring, we took care of the requirements at that stage, but that has evolved over these past few months. But I would still say that the journey of understanding the needs and requirement continues. And we also have, we have worked out the many would be in transition process. So the kind of support that needs to be given, whether it is medically or financially, um, uh, even when in some of our locations we have hospitals that are managed by us. How do we ensure that the members, while in this phase of transition, do get when they get admitted, they have admission as per their preference. So therefore we have now put out a process whereby such members will only be given cabins. So there are many small things and big things that are evolving every day, and we are trying to put all of it together in a very structured manner to be able to handle all of it without any issue. We also have a spock in the medical fraternity who continuously engages with the members from the community to understand their needs, and then to plow it back into our medical policies that we have. So yes, this is something that keeps evolving as we continue to talk. And the good thing is that people feel free to come and express their issues and concerns, and that really helps us to plow it back into our policies that we have.
Thank you for that, Jay. I'm also wondering that, given that you said that you've opened up the mining space for the trans folks, so one, out of curiosity, how did that idea come about? And secondly, have there been any specific challenges or solutions that you had to come up with?
So Shivangi, it was quite simple. So today we have, let me tell you that it started with mines, but today we have members from the trans community at all our locations and across various shop floor and office functions. But when we were looking at our mines location, uh, uh, to the team there locally, there were vacancies that we had for heavy earth moving machinery operators at that time. And the good thing is that I think some years ago people would not have thought these are huge vehicles. And considering the biases that we have several times unsaid, these kind of work typically would go to the male members. So there was vacancy, and the managers, local managers there, they thought that of looking at this space and providing opportunity to mainstream members from the trans community, and that is how the conversation started. And much like what Neha and Jyoti mentioned earlier, even before, so we went about the process, and I'll talk about it later. But it requires a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions, not only with the workforce. When I talk of workforce, I'm talking of the management and union of Tata Steel, but also the community, because in the mines it's a close knit community. A lot of conversations with the community, with the medical fraternity, and a lot of discussions happen. The good thing is that there was no pushback from anybody, and everyone that was spoken to was very welcoming of the suggestion. And that is what spurred the team there to start the whole process of identifying members. And it happened through a formal process of taking out a pan India ad, talking to our informal networks, connecting with NGOs, many agencies that we are in touch with. And that is how the first uh, the CV, the bank of CV got created, and a lot of reasonable accommodation even during the interview process to address the needs, specific needs that were there from some of the members who finally got onboarded. So it started, and our experience with West Bokaro helped us create a playbook, on how we should go ahead. And in the last 6 months now, we have members from the community working in our Kalinganagar plant. They are in Jamshedpur, they are in Kharagpur, in lots of our manufacturing locations, and they are working in various areas. They're working in supply chain, they're working as crane operators in our batteries. So many uh, opportunities have opened up, and that's the beauty of it, that you create one success and it acts as an accelerator. And a lot of it is being done by business, which is an even better thing, where people have taken the ownership to look for such opportunities and work on our agenda. We have an agenda of having a diverse workforce, which is 25% diverse by 2025. So it's a good a very positive thing that business has taken the lead in making sure that we move forward on this with all vigor and passion. So that is how it has been for us, Shivangi.
Thank you, Jaya. I'll also take a quick moment to just see if there are any comments for us. I just see one comment here from Sandhya. The comment is, Byte Dance is inclusive. I'm ex-employee to Byte Dance. Very proud of the work culture. Thank you, Sandhya, for that. And anybody else as well, if there's any other comments or thoughts, questions, anything that you have, please feel free to drop in, and I'm going to ensure that I ask all of those questions to the three panelists here. So moving on, in this conversation, I'm also wondering that uh, how ready do you think employees are whenever you've taken these inclusivity related measures, or you've done awareness programs? Are there ways to identify how employees are treating such measures? And B, you also mentioned about the, like, for example, Neha, you mentioned about the Count Me In program, and Jyoti, you have a similar thing as well, right, which you have opened up to ensure that if at all employees want to come and talk about what their background is in terms of SOGIs, then they can do so. Have you seen employees participating in that as well? And how has that whole experience been like? So perhaps Jyoti, we can start with you here.
Um, I would say that we're very blessed to have a thriving council. We call these councils, and we're also, it's taken us some time to get here. It's not been easy. And when you see that there is affirmative action, whether positive or if there is any serious issue, that the organization takes affirmative action, I think that gives confidence for both, the organization as well as colleagues. Um, I would say, and I'm just thinking through how people receive this, your question. Um, I would say that it's very, very important to pave way for conversations first. And how do you do that? And Neha also gave some brilliant examples of how we go about having those SOGI 101 sensitization sessions, or having mental mental health champions who can support conversations when someone wants to come and have it. Particularly during the pandemic, we have observed, and we have a global pride network, other than the regional chapters as well, that our global pride chapters used to, have these sessions, and people found these as the only way that they could actually come out and have an honest conversation when you're just confined to the four walls of your home. So having those conversations is very important. And as organization, what is really important for us is how are we making way to do this? Why are we, and really it all comes from the intent. The first step here is intent. And why are we doing this as an organization? What does it mean to us? And a simple view is that I want this to be a safe place to work for everyone. And if I say that, if other hiring managers say that, if our peers say that, our colleagues say that, all the things that we talk about of how inclusion of underrepresented groups brings business impact, business benefit, the talent we tend to use if we don't, if we are not inclusive, the economic impact, all of this is written and known. But the most important thing is, do we understand what role we could play as an organization? And I feel that it is the most important thing is we publish, we we say it so many times, and we have to talk about it over and over again. It is going to be draining at times, but it is okay. But these are lived experiences of people. So how do we have those engagements? How do we strike those conversations continuously over and over again is something that we have to continuously focus on.
Thank you, Jyoti. Neha, any comments from you on this as well?
Yeah,
New
so
employees taking it in.
absolutely. So even when we started off this campaign called Count Me In, initially we rolled it out. In India, we didn't see the number ticking up as much, but globally we saw a lot more people sort of self ID. And that's when we realized there is a need for more and more sensitization conversations, or more and more faces conversations, like we say, where we call in people from the community to have to sort of share their experiences and answer some, have this really candid conversation. And what we've realized is when we started having these sessions, like more and more of these soji or faces sessions, we started seeing that the self ID number started going up, not monumentally, but we started seeing a shift. And see, our objective is not to get everyone to self ID. That's really not the objective. I mean, it's not that straight people are always expected to walk up and say, "Hi, I'm straight," right? So we shouldn't be expecting that from people from the community. But as far as an organization is concerned, such campaigns help us shape our policies, help us understand where are the gaps, if any, and what can we do as an organization, what can we do as business resource groups or ERGs to sort of fix these gaps or bridge them, right? So that has always been the objective. And one challenge, like when you were saying, you were also talking about challenges, one big challenge would be this, to see if more and more people are comfortable to self ID. That can be like a very good indicator to see how inclusive is the organization, and how included or safe does any employee from the LGBT community feel when they're working with a corporation, right? So that can be a major indicator, and that's what we are sort of working towards, to ensure that more and more people feel comfortable. And even when we have these sensitization sessions, right, there are so many questions. Sometimes we get really basic questions. Sometimes people would have thought it through. In cases, if people have applied for gender affirmation, if they're going through gender affirmation, we've had cases where folks might not feel comfortable being in office, because until that day they must have been a he and identified as a male, and been working with this set of co-workers for all this while. And then after the surgery is completed, or even during the process, there are chances that an employee feels uncomfortable, right? And might not feel comfortable, like from the next day on, everybody, the pronouns are going to be she, everybody is going to refer as a her. And there are a lot of inhibitions also. The talent might have, the team also might have some time, might take some time to sort of readjust to this change, although that shouldn't be the case. But how often do we come across these situations to be well prepared? So these are some of the challenges that we could see that can come up. But as organizations, we can't change the society at large. But what can we do as an employer to make this easy? Do we offer full-time remote working till such time that the person feels comfortable? Do we offer more and more conversations with the team to sort of help rehabilitate or reinstate the member back? These are the kind of important conversations that we should be having at the organization. These are the probable challenges that will also come up in our journey of being inclusive.
Thank you, Neha. And I think very rightly said. Again, a quick takeaway for me from all of the three panelists is that whenever you've launched these initiatives at whatever point in time, you have been able to get a positive feedback, and there has been a positive movement forward. I think it's also very important, because as organizations, we've seen that sometimes organizations build up these come up with these concerns or questions, or just thoughts that, okay, I mean, how do I really start this? And what if employees don't take this in a positive way? Or how do I ask a person what background they belong to? Is that not too personal? Or some of the times, we've also had people saying that in my organization we don't have anybody from the community. But the thing is that these are some of the things that also we can't assume. There are sometimes it's important to also take some of these steps, perhaps small little steps, and slowly and gradually see how employees are responding to such initiatives. And I think Neha, as you rightly said, that if slowly and gradually, as in more employees also start identifying, start telling it starts becoming a set of a diverse pool within the organization itself. And one is able to identify what are the other things that we need to do to again move forward. So I think very nicely put. Thank you so much for that. And I just want to move to Jaya.
Yeah, Shivangi. I for a minute I was on hold, so I presume we are continuing with the earlier question, or did you ask something new?
Oh, right.
Well,
Sorry, no, I thought that you wanted to add something, so that's why I
yeah,
was
I did,
waiting.
I did. So thanks for that. Very key point which Jyoti emphasized. The key to this is communication and constant communication, and that is where you start to move the needle as far as inclusivity is concerned. Even at Tata Steel, we have all our systems are no longer binary, our HR systems, and we do respect the fact that. Sharing information about one's gender identity is a personal preference. They have an option to voluntarily disclose their gender identity or information about their HIV status, etc., etc. So it's something that is there. The system is there, and even I can go and put in my, I can choose to fill up if I wish to. But the important part is to continuously communicate. And at Artistry too, in 2015, we found formed a council called Mosaic, and through that, the key initiative has been to continuously engage with the workforce and the community to sensitize to various efforts. So we run something called Kholo Man Ke Dwar. It's a campaign that we run on many subjects to bring in awareness of people on many things. I think earlier in the conversation, someone talked about even the basic understanding of LGBTQIA. Not necessary that everyone understands. So starting from there to making people understand what it takes to be inclusive, getting subject matter experts to engage with the members of the community and others to sensitize them on what are some special needs, what are the way you address people. So all of that is required to be done, and it's not a one-time effort, something that you need to do continuously. We carry on many things like understanding gender and sexuality, and we bring in maybe it could be a film star. I remember a couple of years ago we got Ayushmann Khurrana to talk to people, and that uh, these all such endeavors is aimed to make people aware and sensitize them to the needs, and to make sure that we are moving in the right direction as far as inclusivity is concerned. And one way I think Neha mentioned about the numbers increasing of people who self-declare. The other way I would think is that uh, if uh, the complaints that come in and you do monitor the complaints, it's good to have any complaint that does happen, it gets registered. But if you see the trend of your complaint, if that looks healthy, and after encouraging everyone to put in any issue that they face, is also one indicator to say that the company is inclusive. And so we should do that to make sure that we are actually walking the talk and people are happy at their workplace. The other is, recently in the Pride Month, we also had an engagement with experts on mental well-being for the members of the community, and it was heartening to see a lot of people open up and talk about issues, big and small. And the very fact that they could open up and ask their questions without any fear was vindication to some extent, I would think, to of the fact that yes, they feel comfortable to talk, and they know they know that we are all allies in this journey. So these are some things that one needs to do, and this is a continuous effort. Nothing that you do has an end date to this. Thank you, Shivangi.
Thank you, Jaya, for that, and again, very helpful information. And as you rightly said, complaints are sometimes actually a good thing. It just helps us understand, where we really stand. So it could be a very positive thing as well. I also want to ask another question that when we talk about hiring as well, and looking at effective recruitment, do you see any sort of equitable measures required to ensure that the hiring happens properly, as well as the retention happens? And I'm asking this because a lot of times when we look at the background, the history, how sometimes the members, especially I'm talking about the trans and the intersex folks here, could have been treated in the past, due to years and years of discrimination and marginalization. So it could be sometimes, and I'm not saying that this is a universal situation, but in some cases it could be that education may have suffered, or so many challenges could have come from a family perspective background. They having been a person may having been asked to leave their home. So there could be so many things that could come in. So do you also see that when these hiring initiatives are taken, some kind of equitable measures may also be required? And perhaps, Neha, we can start from you.
Absolutely. So, like you shared, right, especially folks from the trans community may have dropped out after class 10 or after class 12. Only certain really privileged folks would have gone through college education, and they are mostly from affluent families, and which is why they would have had those resources. But the major population may not have, and the education must have suffered. So that's definitely something that we looked at. So one thing was sure, we had to make certain reasonable accommodations. So like you said, an equitable measure, like even with our other programs that we run, when we understand that traditionally there has been injustice done, like equal access to education itself was not given, then how do we expect them to get enter into a workplace and also set them up for success, right? So we decided that in these cases, if there is talent, and if there's right attitude, and that learnability part is there, then we're going to make those accommodations to ensure that even if they don't have this degree, what where are they in terms of communication, where are they in terms of that can do attitude, ensure that there is a mentorship program in place, and then hire at maybe a fresher level, and then see how the career progression really happens. So we understand that there has to be some reasonable accommodations that need to be made for these candidates, when it in this case usually applies only for people from the trans community, like you rightly said, Shivangi. For others, not so much. For other folks on the spectrum, the challenge really is, are they comfortable to come out, or even if they don't want to come, or even if they're closeted, how comfortable are they in their skin, and how ready is the workforce to sort of embrace and work alongside or collaborate with folks from the community. So yeah, so this, like you said, it only applies to the trans community, and this is something that we're trying to do, case to case basis, see what is the thing that we can do. The next thing is retention. Many a times we've realized that hiring might not be so much of a challenge, because they do really well, the panel's really impressed, and then there's like a whole system in place, support system in place. So hiring, I wouldn't trivialize saying it's not at all difficult, but compared to retention and hiring, I think retention is what that we'll have to focus a lot on. So retaining is, when that comes, when we reach that stage, it's not just the HR team, or it's not just the DNI team or the hiring managers, right? It is the behavior of every team member, every stakeholder that they interact with, internal and external, which is why even our external stakeholders many a times need to be sensitized, the vendors, suppliers that we work with, the procurement system that we have in place. So the whole ecosystem around this person needs to be sensitized, and if there is a fallout there, if there is a gap there, then retention can become challenging. Then it'll mostly be like putting out fire sort of a case, because when it reaches to a stage of there is an issue, and that's when the HR and the whole team gets into being, then the kind of effort that goes into sort of appease the situation is a lot more higher. So I would say that retention is definitely something that we need to sort of take care of, and in order to do that, there has to be continuous intervention that the organization will have to do until we as a society reach a phase where this is no more a problem.
Thank you, Neha. And I can't believe that we are almost close to the end of an hour. There are about 6 more minutes left, so I'm going to try and take a quick, experience from both of you, Jyoti and Jaya, as well. Just want to see if there are any comments. Okay, so there aren't any comments. I actually wanted to ask you so many more questions about, especially Jaya, to you about the honeymoon policy, the package that you talked about, and there's also HIV related policies that you have. And Neha, wanted to talk more about the transition policy and how you've been going about it. But it just seems like, as you know, before this conversation started, I was saying 1 hour is just not enough. So I guess that's where we are at right now. Probably I'm going to try and catch the three of you later as well, try and get more understanding around some of these aspects. But just to close today's conversation, moving on to you, Jyoti, have you seen any need for any equitable measures so far, and what is your experience?
Need for, sorry, what
Any
measures
sort
could
of any sort of equitable measures
equitable measures?
or any accommodations? Yes.
I think Neha covered it all, right? And in the interest of time, I would not want to repeat. And our thoughts as an organization, individually, me also, are similar. I would just add that being visible externally as an organization that is a safe place to work is extremely important, and putting yourself out is very important. And maybe I'll add one, and this is my own learning through the process over the last more than a decade now, is that there is a huge need even before we get to the stage of having equitable processes. I think we all have a responsibility to educate ourselves. We cannot expect every person from the community to come and share and talk. It is already an uphill journey. And one thing that takes us to the equitable measure as individuals and an organization is, how do we educate ourselves, right? It's okay not to know things. And here's where allies can play a huge role. And I'll share my own experience. I think that, if I really look back, though I have been involved for a very long time, I personally feel that I have shied away about having conversations. And that's a realization that I have. And a few years ago, I put up my hand voluntarily to say that I'll become the co-sponsor, and that was my learning journey, because that's how I wanted to learn. It is very important for us to take that first step. Finally, to be able to offer an equitable measure, the first thing would be a sense of belonging. And I think as an organization, that's what we focus on. The policies, whether it is recruitment, workplace, everything becomes the construct, right? Then you have the community, which is all our people together, whether it is leaders, it's managers, it's the peer community. And then there is the culture, right? How we feel, how he behave comes out in the form of culture, and that's what really tells you whether I belong here or not. And really, I think our focus should be there to be able to move towards a equitable future in this area.
Thank you, Jyoti. And again, very important. I think educating ourselves becomes the very first step if at all we want to do anything about it. So very rightly said. And just for the viewers, I want to quickly mention that on our website we do try and take initiatives to try and put as much information as possible for us to just keep educating ourselves. So there's a specific segment called Educate Yourself. If you click on that, you'll be able to see a couple of basic things that you should be knowing, and we keep trying and building on that and updating it as much as possible. Yeah. Also, just moving on to Jaya. Any last comments and thoughts, Jaya? Over to you. Just 1.5 minutes for you.
Thank you, Shivangi. First, just the question that you asked earlier, I think very well put by both Neha and Jyoti. Just to add to that, so the idea is that any organization has to be aware about who we are recruiting, and importantly, who we are not recruiting, intentionally or unintentionally. And like Neha mentioned earlier, so there is always reasonable accommodation to be considered, and all that she said is something that is true, something that we've also followed. And just to give an additional point, in order to make sure that the people that you are recruiting are able to perform their job well, it is very important to be able to give them that training and development that is required in order for them to carry out their job. So for all the members that we have onboarded so far, and they are in various domains, a very holistic developmental program is made by us. It is customized, and it covers not only the functional skills that are required for them to perform their job, but it also covers aspects of the organization's values, the culture, the soft skills, and all of it put together is what can make an individual do well in their job. This kind of program, we do it for all our new joinees, and there is nothing different for our members from the trans community. So we have them working in various areas, and we run programs which could be as long as 6 months, 8 months, to make them ready to take on that job. It follows an assessment process and so on. So there is no differentiation. But I think this is a very important aspect also, to make sure that they are able to perform, and therefore the retention is higher. And after that, for any job, positions that come up, obviously there is a MQ that is required, and there is an experience that is required, and that has to be open for anybody who fits the MQ and the experience to be able to apply and move forward in their career. So this was an additional point that I wanted to add to what Neha and Jyoti covered earlier. Lastly, just since we are at the close of it, I would only like to say that there lots is happening individually by organizations, and there is a general awareness that is in a much more intense space. But there is a need for any and everyone to go beyond just performative allyship, and we have to be able to look for opportunities to mainstream more and more members from the marginalized community. uh, Obviously there are limitless opportunities that is there for anyone to look at, and each one of us have a job to be a role model. We have to influence and drive change that does not only have an organizational impact but also has a social impact, which is very important. That is how the journey can really get escalated. And all of us have a part to play to help create an inclusive workplace culture. And Jyoti mentioned it, where she said that she raised her hand and came forward to. So that is something that is expected out of each one of us. DEI is not just for members who are classified as DEI people, but it's there for each one of us. And together, I think we can all work to make a better world, a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I think that's a wonderful way of ending today's conversation. You've just summed it up perfectly, to say that it's not just the human thing, it's also, and not just the organizational requirement, but also the social impact part of it that really, really makes it important. And each one of us have a role to play in this. So thank you so much for this. It's been a wonderful conversation. Got to learn a lot in this short span of time as well. And I'm hoping this is the case with our viewers as well. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for giving your time.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.